Hello folks, and welcome to me and the Bee Play Borderlands 2, the least optimized version of this playthrough of this game that you will ever see, I can guarantee you. We are, as you can see, we've chosen our Gunzerker. I chose him because for some reason I totally forgot that I actually had used this character. I thought I hadn't really done much with him. He was actually, I think, the first character I played this game with, at least on Steam. I've owned this game for pretty much every platform it's been available on, and I've probably done 2 or 3 playthroughs on each one of them. So at some point I forgot that I actually did a full playthrough. I have like a level 63 Gunzerker. But anyway, as you can see, Gunzerker, he is a, you know, a dual wielding, that's his speciality, is a dual wielding berserker, you know, crazy guy, take damage, gives you more energy, gives you more power, all that kind of stuff. It's really fun. But you're supposed to be using like machine guns and submachine guns and shotguns and all these kind of crazy fun stuff. I end up using a sniper rifle for most of this. And spoiler alert, this was a little clickbaity. I say me and the Bee because for the vast majority, there's 25 episodes, and for the vast majority of them, we are using the Bee shield lots of times in conjunction with a sniper rifle. But I didn't really know that going into this. I just had a hankering to play Borderlands 2. It had been a long time, a couple years since I'd done my last playthrough, and I was like, I just kind of want to do a first-person shooter RPG, so let me go ahead and do it. And I was just kind of, as you can see, there's no rhyme or reason to it initially. And for the first 5 levels, there's really not much you can do anyway. But when you start getting into the build, and as I said, once I got my first Bee shield, which for those you don't know, that's the Bee is a legendary shield. There's different tiers of weapons. The highest, well, not the highest. The 2 highest, I think, are Pearlescent and there's another one, I think. But the highest, one of the most high, mental breakdown. Crap. Legendaries are pretty darn good. They're really good. A lot of them. Some of them stink. Some of them. Legendary just means it's got some unique properties that can really give you a good advantage in some way or another. The Bee shield is essentially, it turns you into a glass cannon. It is virtually 0 protection, but as long as that shield is fully charged, all of your shots have multipliers attached to every shot. So if you got a shotgun with 4 pellets, it amplifies each one of those 4, you know, pellets or whatever. And so it can be really good. Or for a sniper rifle that has, you know, immense power anyway, it magnifies that exponentially. So it's really good, but again, it makes you very vulnerable. You don't have a lot of shields, and it doesn't have that effect if you take damage at all. In the time it takes for you to, you know, recharge that, you can pretty much just get slaughtered. So anyway, suboptimal build, suboptimal playthrough, but it is a complete playthrough, not a thorough playthrough. We do finish the game. Like I said, 25 episodes. It's going to take you to the end of the game. We do not do all the side quests. We don't do all the little missions and stuff, and I don't take a lot of time to go through the cutscenes and really try to delve into the story too much. So if you want to see a Borderlands 2 like playthrough where there's focus on the story, I mean, I'm going to be talking about the story and all the wonderful qualities of Borderlands 2, but it's not purposefully for the sake of a narrative. As you can tell, as I'm talking over plot points out of stuff as it goes, but really there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. That is our tutorial guide. He's from the first game, Claptrap is, and again, this is just us getting familiar with the game. He's a, I don't want to say controversial or divisive necessarily character, but some people like him. They think he's cool. Some people think he's annoying. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that too much. Just to give you an idea of what you're getting into is what I was trying, the point I'm trying to make. So as you can tell, I am hands-free. I'm not playing this. I played this probably 3 months ago. And part of the reason I'm doing this now is because it's taken up a lot of space on my hard drive. And I was like, screw it, I either need to make these videos or just delete the files. So I figured, hey, I played it. I had a good time with it. I'll go ahead and do the commentary afterward. That way, the commentary can kind of stand on its own, and I don't have to divide my time between playing and commentating. And as you can tell, as rough as this is right now, imagine how much worse it would be if I was trying to play at the same time. So that's just me trying to shore up my weaknesses a little bit. So anywho, yeah, like I said, I for some reason the Borderlands series has resonated with me, has been something that I've enjoyed thoroughly. Probably if I had like my top 5 games or top 5 most played games, if you took out Mario games, starting with like original Nintendo and everything, it's definitely in the top 5. I know Need for Speed Most Wanted was up there. Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds was up there. Diablo 2 might have been up there. Punch-Out, Super Punch-Out. I mean, okay, there's a lot of games, but I have logged a ton of time with Borderlands. You may not be able to tell by my level of play, because I ain't a gamer. I am a guy who likes to play games, but I am not a gamer. I don't have a great sense of direction. I don't pick up on things very quickly. The fact that I'm able to get through this at all is just a testimony to the fact that I've played it several times, done many playthroughs. And this isn't true Vault Hunter mode. With Borderlands 2, you have true Vault Hunter mode, ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and then I think it's... I've never gone higher than that, but I'm pretty sure it's a... I don't remember what it's called, but essentially it's just everything scales with you, and you just maximize your leveling. I can't remember what that's called, but I've never gone up that high. The most I've done is beat Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. And I really haven't wanted to. I mean, at that point, I've played it quite a bit, and I've kind of gotten my fill of it for a while. So, but this is the original playthrough. This is the first playthrough, so it's not incredibly challenging. The slag mechanic still works pretty well. I think that gets nerfed either in either the next tier up. I think it's the third one where slag doesn't work. And it really is the mitigating factor. And for those of you who don't know, slag is an elemental enhancement you can have for certain weapons, and it pretty much just increases your opponent's vulnerability. If they get slag, they kind of turn purple, and for a short period of time, and all of your shots do more damage. And so you kind of have to do like a lot of weapon swapping, or in the case of the Gunzerker, when you activate his special, he's dual wielding, so if you have slag in one hand and a regular weapon in the other, it's a really good combination. And I think you have to rely more on that as it goes, but I think its efficacy gets reduced with each playthrough. I know general elemental damage gets reduced as you go through, so characters that are weak to fire, for example, well, this may come as a shock based on what I just said, but they actually can take fire damage better in the higher levels. That's the point that I was getting at. This is a really rough start. I've already restarted this a few times. I've just acknowledged it's going to be rough. I made the mistake once again of doing this later in the day. I thought, it's evening time. I'm kind of settling in for the night. This would be a nice way to kind of cap everything off. But I think what that just means is my brain has already called it quits for the day, and I've got to coax it back into. This video is going to be 1 hour and 30 minutes. That's another benefit of having the video, being able to watch it and do the commentary separate. I don't remember what happens in this. I could not tell you anything. I'm not going to be like, oh, wait till you see what this, what I do here or anything. I know the basic plot, so I can anticipate that, but I don't remember anything special about this playthrough, other than we do get the Bee Shield by playing one of the Headhunter expansions, and I think we give it up a few times, like we swap out, but eventually I'm like, hey, this is actually is going to make it fun for me. It's going to make it different than other playthroughs. And like I said, for this particular character, a sniper rifle and the Bee Shield are suboptimal. Like really bad. Really not a good idea. But that does not stop us. So, as I said, there's 4 Headhunter DLCs. There's a Christmas-themed one, Marcus's Mercenary Shop. There's a Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day hybrid, where it's like you're fighting a bunch of Irish stuff. You got Irish music going on. You've got Irish clan folks and everything. But then it's got a Valentine theme. You're trying to get these 2 characters to get married or whatever. It's Borderlands, man. It's weird. If you haven't gathered that by now, Borderlands is just really kind of what the heck is going on here? It's baffling to me why I like this series so much, because I'm not a big a post-apocalyptic guy. It's like Mad Max. I could not give you a objective review of that movie or of that series because it's just not my cup of tea. If Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. We'll hopefully get to those, but it's just not my thing. And Borderlands is kind of, especially the original, is kind of modeled after that. It's a very barren land, but instead of it being post-apocalyptic, it's just a crap planet. It's a very mournful planet. The music is very isolating. It's a very you kind of feel sorry for the planet of Pandora, which is what it's called. And it's just, you know, it was kind of founded or developed by corporations, and then it was found out that it was really inhospitable and it wasn't worth the effort, and so a lot of people get left behind and they become bandits, they become psychotic, and things just kind of go downhill from there. But it just so happens there is rumors of a vault here, and that draws us as vault hunters to it. But it really is just a very bleak landscape, lots of browns, you know, not a lot of variation. Again, in the first game, the second one, obviously, we're starting off on Hoth, for crying out loud. They really get into all the different environments of Pandora. It's a much more colorful game. I mean, this is a drastic improvement over the original in all respects, keeping what made the first one good, which was the variable loot system. It's pretty much, as best as I can recall, the developers essentially created like 5 different stocks, or a variety of different stocks, muzzles, hand grips, all these different things that you don't see or that aren't pointed out in the gun. Like you can see it if you look at the gun, you can see like the hand grip or the scope that you're using or what have you, but it doesn't equal out to stats. But for those who've really gotten into the game, when you put them together in certain combinations, you get weapons with different strengths, weaknesses, and projectile counts. Some of them, so you can have multiple varieties of any particular weapon. It's really cool, but they're randomly put together, so it's like the millions of different combinations are possible, and so it's you never know what you're gonna get. That was not my Forrest Gump. I didn't bother doing Forrest Gump. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't a Forrest Gump. But anyway, so Pandora, just a very bleak place. And it gets a lot more colorful here. I mean, as you can see in the background, you can see the Hyperion station on the moon. And there's the pre-sequel, which is also pretty darn good. Not as good as the second one, not as robust as the second one, but it's still good in its own right. And you actually get to be on the moon. You get to do some exploring there. Here, we'll never go to the moon. But we do get a much greater variety of environments to go through. But yeah, the first game was, again, very Mad Max-ish, and there's even a character called Mad Mel who you have to fight, and just an homage to that genre, and a lot of seems to be like a lot of the ideas where they got a lot of the ideas for the series. But like I said, I'm not into that thing. I don't like desert landscapes in general. I don't like dry, arid landscapes. I like lush forests. Like I like Predator's environment, the jungle. I like a lot of World War II type stuff where it's forests and fields and things. I like a lot of greenery. So there is some in this game, but in the original there wasn't. And it is still, in a lot of places, very bleak, very just kind of meh. And it's run down, like you're seeing corrugated metal and just, everything's kind of shoddy. It's not very schwanky. There actually is one of the Headhunter DLCs takes place on, what is it called? Wham Bam Island, which it's kind of like Hawaii-esque. It looks like a resort, and that's about as close as you get to societal refinement in this game. And I think that's because it's supposed to be like the Easter DLC. There's no Easter-ness about it. I mean, there are eggs involved, but they belong to really nasty creatures. But anyway, the environment, the setting for these games is just, as I said, very bleak, very, very rough and raw, and that's, I'm a guy, I like saturated colors. I like Mario. I like, happy things, fun things. That's just what I default to. But then there are games like this one that mysteriously draw me in, and I think it really is the combination. I like first-person shooting. I like the mechanics of it, and I like the RPG. And the RPG is really what hooks me. That's what gets me into these games. So I guess mystery solved. That's why I like the game, because it's got a heavy RPG element. As you can see, we're at level 02 right now. Or level 2, as some may say, because you don't have to say the O. And when you get to level 5, you unlock your skill tree and your special. And like I said, Gunzerkers, you activate it and he dual wields, and you can enhance that with different things on the skill tree depending which branch you go down. I don't remember which one we go down, but you have ones where you regenerate health when as soon as you trigger that. You're more resistant to damage, you get faster reload speeds, all these kind of things. And you'll see that as we go through. And here is Sir Hammerlock. The characters in here are a lot of fun. And Sir Hammerlock is probably one of the more like normal characters. He's a fun character, but he's not like depraved or deranged or has some weird thing. You're going to see most of the other characters in this game are very odd. You just have to imagine there's something on this planet that, even if it's not the iridium, which is a driving feature of the story, and you can get like iridium poisoning, and I think that's, in theory, that's how a lot of the psycho bandits are created. They're exposed to this stuff and it just kind of rots your brain. But even characters that aren't supposed to be psycho are just really off. And that's another thing I don't particularly like. I don't like crazy. I've never liked crazy characters. I think a lot of times crazy characters are written lazily because you're just like, well, we can have them do anything. We don't have to have them conform to anything rational or predictable or anything that makes sense, because they're crazy, so they can do whatever they want. I think, was it 12 Monkeys? Is that what it's called? 12 Monkeys, 7 Monkeys? It's an old movie, so I apologize if this is a spoiler, but as I remember, it's something where it's like the whole plot, the whole reason why the plot is happening is because there's a crazy guy who just wants to do crazy things. And I was like, it's kind of a letdown for me. I was like, because it just doesn't, I don't know, crazy is lazy. That's my beef. But it's okay to have just crazy lackeys. Like, you got guys running around, yelling crazy things, and those are the guys you're shooting. That's totally fine. But when it comes to actual characters, and you could say even Handsome Jack as the antagonist, he's a little out there. But he's not. I don't know, deranged. Like, I don't know. Does deranged imply evil, or is it just a hyper level of craziness? I don't know. These are the kind of in-depth questions we ask on this sub-optimized full playthrough of Borderlands 2 with me and the Bee. I feel like I'm doing product placement or branding. And in a way, I guess I am. But yeah, so it's got to be the RNG, or not the RNG. Hate RNG. It's got to be the RPG element that keeps me coming back. Because I've never maxed out at any character. I think the highest level I've gotten is like 64, 65 somewhere. And I think the level cap is 70. But it gets really hard. It might even be higher than that now. They kept increasing it with the different DLCs. But anyway, sorry, I'm all over the place here, folks. You'll have to forgive me. So we have the 4 Headhunter DLCs. They're like mini DLCs. They're not full deals. They'll take 3 to 4 hours, most of them. Like I said, you've got the Christmas, you've got Halloween, you've got Thanksgiving, and then you've got like the Easter, and then the St. Patrick's Day and Valentine's Day kind of hybrid. And I also included 2 of my favorite actual DLCs in this, which is Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, and not bunnies. What's the other one? Wow, I'm completely drawing a blank. It's hard for me to really make a point that I'm a fan of that DLC if I can't even remember what the heck it's called. What do we play? So that one, it's not Torg's Campaign of Carnage. That one's okay, but really the only reason I like that is because you can farm vending machines for Unkempt Heralds, which is a legendary weapon that's freaking fantastic. We do, actually, so part of what I do like about this playthrough, what I wanted to do is I spent a lot of time, I've played this game so much, folks, I actually have characters called like Bank 1, Bank 2, Bank 3, and they are literally characters that I created and got to level, whatever, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many levels it takes to get to Sanctuary, which is one of the early kind of goals in the game is to make it to Sanctuary. It takes several hours to get there. But once you get there, you have access to a vault and access to like a small locker that allows you to change to transfer weapons to different characters. So if I pick up a legendary weapon, even legendary weapons in this game most of the time they're only going to be overpowered or really beneficial for like 3 or 4 levels. Once you're 4 levels or 5 levels above your character level is 4 levels. Your character is 4 or 5 levels above your weapon level. The weapon is no longer really that great because the enemies level up with you. I mean, they don't level up exactly with you. You're going to go to some areas where they're still really low, but as you go through the game, they're going to quickly rise up to match you. And if they're at your level, the gun is going to be kind of underpowered. It's still going to be better than a regular weapon at that level, but like some of your like basic common, or not commons probably, but your rares and your epics are going to be more effective than an older legendary weapon. So, but what getting to that point in the game allows you to do is then I can put those in a locker. I can put those legendary weapons in a locker, and then as soon as I'm ready, I'm leveled up enough to use them. So that's another thing too. For anybody who doesn't know the RPG element, when you're watching, the guns will tell you what level they are, and you have to be at that level. In other words, in theory, your character has to be skilled enough or strong enough to be able to wield this weapon. And so the levels have to match. So right now, if I had a level 4 weapon in my inventory, I wouldn't be able to equip it because I'm a level 3. So that's just a basic for anybody who's watching and has no idea what RPG factors or elements are. See it says level requirement at the top of the card. Bad example. I didn't really give you a lot of time. Oh yeah, here. See, it says level requirement 3. Yeah. So anyway, you can pause it if you want to, but that's just FYI as we move through. But what I wanted to do was take advantage of all the legendary weapons that I've been gathering. And the whole point for me having several characters that all they are essentially storage slots is so that I could kind of have an overpowered playthrough. You know, kind of go God tier for a little while and just have like at pretty much every level or with every 4 levels have a legendary weapon, a good legendary weapon or shield or something that I can use to rock the game. And I kind of do that here. On one of the other systems, one of my other, I don't remember what system it would be on. Like I got lucky, I think it's called the Hornet, and it's a legendary pistol that you get. You can farm the Knuckle Dragger, the big Bullymong that we fight at the very beginning of the game that throws the car. You can farm him, and that's a legendary with relatively high drop rate, comparatively high drop rate. But I ended up getting it just organically at one point. And actually that was a bit of a disappointment, and now that I think about it. There was also another one you can get that's kind of like it's an assault rifle that shoots kind of grenades anyway. It's also a legendary. The problem is those are like level 2, level 3, which is great, but by the time you get to Sanctuary to be able to give those to another character, or by the time your character could access that stash, you're already like a level 10. And like I said, the lower legendaries after about 5 levels are no longer effective. So I was about to bemoan the fact that I did not have a low-level legendary, but then I'm realizing I wouldn't be able to use it in this playthrough anyway. So, anywho, we do have some Unkempt Heralds that we will bring in later on, which is great. Dual wielding an Unkempt Herald is fantastic. I love those guns. They look kind of cool, and I like the name. I didn't actually make the connection there. A lot of the weapons and names in these games are homages or allusions to other works, and so Unkempt Herald is an allusion to Dirty Harry. So it's another way of saying Dirty Harry, but unkempt to me is a little more than dirty. It's like frumpy and like your shirt's not tucked in, and it doesn't mean you're dirty. It just means you're, like I said, you're kind of frumpy and you're not well put together. But I guess dirty could be part of it. But anyway, so it's called the Unkempt Herald, and it's just really freaking powerful. And usually, like, again, there's different variations. Some of them have better scope. Some of them fire faster. Some of them have more projectiles. There's one, it's like a double, I don't know if it's a double barrel, but it's like a double shot. So instead of, I think the standard is 4 projectiles or 6, and so it doubles that count. So it's crazy. But I have never had the patience to farm for like the optimized Unkempt Herald. So I just, whichever one I found in Torg's Maximum Carnage campaign, that's what I bought from the vending machine. And I'm still, I'm kind of stuck. I'm still trying to remember what the other DLC is, and it's not. I wasn't a big fan of Hammerlock's big game hunts. it didn't really have much appeal to me. We do go there at one point just to kind of get killed, and then I come back to avenge myself on the creature that killed me. So that's something fun to look forward to. What other DLCs are? I've named all the ones that I didn't play. What in the world is the one that I'm missing? Well, I guess we'll find out together. Either that or I'll remember before, because I play them a little bit later on in it, so I kind of mix the Headhunter packs and I mix the DLC in with the story. I did kind of screw up. I tried to do it where I finished the story and then finished the Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which I'm not going to spoil anything, but they're loosely kind of tied together, and it makes more sense to beat the game before playing that because of some of the character interactions. But I screwed that up, but it still works, I think. So you are getting quite a bit of Borderlands 2 packed into this playthrough. And here I am. Is that my first death? You're gonna see that a lot, folks. Like I said, suboptimal. And I'm not gonna lie. Part of it's just I was rusty, or I'm just like screw it, whatever. And oh my gosh, one thing I do remember, there's a lot of times where I'm like bullheadedly just dying over and over again at the same part, trying to beat the bad guy or beat the certain part of the game a certain way, and then I have to stop and think, and I'm like, huh, there's probably a smarter way to do this. And I think of the smarter way. I switch the weapon out, or I change my tactic, and we keep going on. So there's just some places where it's weird. I mean, I had just quit my job, was anticipating the move, and so just kind of in a brain drained state, which seems to happen a lot these days. I probably need to be more active. I need to do more stuff to get my brain going. I need to get a job. But I need to move first. So anyway, I don't want to date this video, so I won't keep talking about a temporary living situation that will no longer be applicable in a very short amount of time. So, anywho, yeah. So I've enjoyed the Borderlands franchise. As I said, I played it multiple times, but it's a very peculiar thing. Oh, and that's another thing. So another genre that I'm not particularly fond of. So I guess post-apocalyptic isn't really a genre. It's more of a setting, a backdrop. And it precludes me from a lot of stuff like the Fallout series and everything. It just doesn't appeal to me. I don't know. I don't know what to say, folks. It's not a thing that does. You know what I always think is interesting, though, and it's very humbling. For as civilized as we are, as much technology as we have, if we were to have an apocalyptic event where we kind of had to start from scratch, like, how far would we actually get? Because I think about it, like, I've thought about it, like, oh man, if I could go back in time and show people, like, our technology, I could show them what it is. I could describe to them how it works in general terms, like a computer. And I could say, oh, we have kind of like what Doc Brown does in Back to the Future 3. We have automobiles, and we run for fun. And I don't know, that's a really bad Dr. Brown. But anyway, like, I could describe things. I could say, oh, there is a computer. Again, depending on how far back you go, you'd have to be able to describe what a computer is for people, because if you try to describe a computer before the big computer, the one that takes up the size of a room, if you try to talk about a computer to somebody before that time, I mean, good luck trying to describe what that is. It's a machine. I guess you could say it's like a typewriter. But no, I mean, I'm not even going to bother. But like, you see what I'm saying? Even trying to describe some of our technology, if you go back far enough, would just almost be impossible, because it requires people to kind of have a basic understanding of the technology before you can talk about how awesome it is. So once you had the first home computer, you know, we're going to like 94 wasn't the first home computer, but that was the first time I remember seeing it in a lot of people's homes. Once you had that, you could then describe what a laptop is. Like, you could say, okay, well, obviously you all know what a laptop is. I don't have to describe it to you. You're not from the past. But you could describe it then, but the language you would have to use and how you have to explain something like a computer or a laptop to somebody, you know, from the 1700s, 1800s, early 1900s would just be almost impossible. So I guess it's even more humbling than I thought, because now that I think about it, I wouldn't even be able to describe what it does. But in theory, I'm not going back that far. I would be able to describe some of our technology, but I wouldn't be able to tell them how in the world it does. I couldn't tell them how a car works. Like, I could say it's a combustion engine, and it uses pistons, and there's gasoline and oil, and they create small controlled explosions that move the pistons, and those transfer to the drive shaft, the crankshaft thingy, which turns the wheels, or which goes to a thing which then does the thing and then turns the axle, which turns the wheels, and it goes. And that's the thing. And then there's a steering wheel, and there's a thing called power steering. I don't know how that works, but it makes the steering easier. And there's brakes, different kinds of brakes, disc brakes. Actually, for cars, I think that's really all you get is disc brakes, right? Well, then you got drums. Do you have disc brakes in cars? See, I don't even know that. I think you have both disc and drum brakes. Or you can have both. But maybe I'm confusing that with a motorcycle. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? I would just be the worst person to send back in time to try to bring humanity up to speed with our technology. But you can apply that to post-apocalyptic, because in theory, if everything gets wiped out, you're having to start from square one. And folks, I don't know that we would actually be able to progress very far, because we have so many layers of interfaces between the baseline of everything and, like, so for example, I mean, as we know, computers, binary is like, I think, I'm not an expert, obviously, but if I'm not mistaken, at the core of all computers, it's still binary, right? We're still talking zeros and ones, but then you have a layer of interface above that which allows you to program without having to program in zeros and ones. And then there can be another level above that, C+ or whatever. I think there's different programming languages that are essentially ways to articulate in a more human way, I think, than a machine way. It interfaces with the machine language in a more human way. I don't know. I could be just talking out of my butt right now. We may no longer be using binary language, the zeros and ones. We may have moved on to something else, and I'm just completely dating myself. But the bottom line is, like, for example, Photoshop. I know how to do stuff in Photoshop, but Photoshop is an interface on top of programs that I have no clue how they work. I don't know how, when I say increase the opacity, I don't know the mechanics behind it. I don't know what is actually the program is telling the computer to do to achieve that opacity. All I know is I move the slider, I change the percentage, and a layer becomes more transparent. I don't know how that actually, what that looks like in the computer language, or how those programmers did it. So Photoshop is like an interface, a user interface over the programs. Everything you can do is like a small, like a little program. I don't know if that's how it actually works out in computer lingo or in construct, but in principle, it's something that allows you to interface with the engine, the driving force of Photoshop, that allows you to do things. You know what I'm saying? I hope you get what I'm saying. I hate when people. Well, I shouldn't hate that. For crying out loud, I never get calls, and I got called. Sorry, I'm such an important person. I'm gonna. You're more important. This video is more important. I'm going to ignore that call. Anyway, talking about computers and stuffs and my ineptitude with them. But that's the point. So if we were to go back to square one, you would have to have people that know how to build Photoshop, like how to. And I'm not saying Photoshop would be a priority in the future, or in a post-apocalyptic world, like that would be what we focus on. But I'm just saying things like that, especially when it comes to computers, like you have to have the people that not know how to use Photoshop, but the people who actually know how to create Photoshop, how to actually create it on that programming level for the people like me who know how to use it to actually do our job. I couldn't interact with Photoshop without sliders and percentages and all the other things that you use to communicate with the program. And so you just wonder how far removed are we from the very basic programming language? Like, where do you have to start when you sit down? If you were to just have nothing but the hardware, no operating system, what do you have to start off with in order to build that operating system, to build an interface with it, to build the brains of a computer? What do you have to? How do you create a motherboard? How do you create a CPU? What goes into it? Obviously, I can look at it and go, okay, it's a bunch of soldering, a bunch of little dingies and little doohickeys and some flimma-jabs and what have you. I mean, I know some of them are called capacitors, and there's capacitors and things, big words. That's actually, all I know is capacitors. There's one other thing that I technically know, but I can't remember right now, so it's just as good as me not knowing. Anyway, it's just humbling to know that despite the fact that I can use a lot of modern technology, even something that's been around for so long, like a car, I would not be able to. If in theory, if I was talking to somebody who's smart enough, I might be able to describe it well enough and describe the elements needed to get them on the right track. But I mean, if somebody told me, "Hey, small explosions in a confined space to make a car go forward," I'd be like, "Wait, what?" Like that don't make no sense. So I don't know, but I think about that sometimes when I'm thinking my deep thoughts by myself. I think about my ineptitude of traveling through time. But I think it applies to the post-apocalyptic world as well, where you just don't know, like how much would we have to relearn? How much could we relearn? How much would we be starting from square one? What would the hierarchy be in a world like that where, okay, you've got tech-savvy people, and so at some point they're going to be very key and important in developing, but when you're talking about basic survival and basic mechanisms like firearms and things like that, like what it's almost like, okay, we have to protect. Well, obviously you want everybody to survive, but I mean in terms of hierarchy, in terms of like, okay, these people are really important. Well, not right now, but in like 10 years they're going to be very important. So it's weird because you kind of know, it's like almost like you can see the future. It's like, okay, we at least know where we got to before. Maybe we take a different route. Maybe since we know how it ends, maybe we can skip a few steps. Like we don't need to go through vinyl and cassettes if we already know what CDs are and how they're made. We can just kind of skip to CDs. Or just to WAV files. We don't have to develop each thing individually. Or do we? Would we be bereft of music for too long if we skipped some of the more basic recording devices along the way? It's like, all right, you're not going to have music for 15 years until we get our technology up to the point where we can record and export into media files and then be able to put those onto portable media players. Anyway, I'm going down a huge rabbit hole, and I think I'm going to climb out now because the rabbit's staring at me cross-eyed, and I don't like its vibe. So we're emerging from that rabbit hole, particularly because this isn't a post-apocalyptic world. The relevancy of that entire conversation to this game is minimal at best, especially this version. The first game, the whole feel of the first game is very different from this. Like I said, it's a lot more isolated. The music is very somber, very sad. There's not a lot of interaction with characters, and the ones you do interact with, it's kind of morbid. Like this one has a lot more humor in it, and even though it's kind of dark humor in places, it's still humor. And there's some of that in the first one, but it's just a lot more bleak. And you feel very isolated. You feel like the planet is mourning its crappy fate and its denizens and its creatures, and just the whole thing. It's just kind of like, why do I have to suck so much? Why do I have to be populated by such depraved minds and bad fates? So here we spice it up. We actually have a central villain in Jack, and it just feels more robust like we're not alone. We know even in the first one, when you had 4 different Vault Hunters to choose from. I'm trying to remember. I guess when you got to the expansions, it made it very clear that, okay, all 4 of you are there. It's not just you're choosing one to play as and the other ones just don't exist. I think it's you're playing as one and the other 3 are just doing their thing elsewhere on the planet. But you don't really interact with them. Oh, but speaking of, okay, so like I said, post-apocalyptic is a backdrop. It's a setting. But there's a genre which is like the zombie genre. I guess it could be its own genre. I mean, it kind of falls under horror, but it's kind of its own thing. And I mean, there's so many people love zombies and zombie stories, and I just don't dig on zombies. I just don't like them. I like my imagination is sparked by things like Terminator, like machines, cyborgs, Mega Man, just anything that's like machines and human blurring the lines between. Awkward phrasing there, but it's kind of that man and machine power extreme. Bonus to anybody who knows what that quote is from. I might remember to tell you at the end of the episode. Hopefully I will. If not, well, you probably won't care. But kudos to anybody who knows what that's from. But just that merging, the idea of intelligent machines that are, with hydraulics, like RoboCop and all that kind of stuff. I always find that stuff fascinating, and I find the lore fascinating, like how in this fictional world these things exist. How do they move? How do their brains function? Like with RoboCop, like wow, he's got human parts mixed in with the cyber. I guess that's what makes him a cyborg versus just a machine like a Terminator. But anyway, like that stuff fascinates me. Zombies kind of gross me out for the most part. Like brains, and that's not an insult. I'm not trying to diss on zombies or the genre. Like I said, I know a lot of people love it. It just doesn't resonate with me. It's not something that draws me in. But for some reason, my favorite DLC from the original game is the Zombie Island of Dr. Ned. Go figure. So Borderlands just kind of breaks all my rules, or the few rules that I have when it comes to genres or backdrops or things that I don't particularly care for. For some reason, like I said, it's not even that I don't mind playing it. I actually actively enjoy the setting, the feel, the vibe, and the mechanics of the Secret Zombie Island of Dr. Ned. Can't explain it, but that's my favorite DLC from that one. And by gum, it is going to bother that. Oh! Captain Scarlet and her Pirate's Booty. That is the other DLC we will be playing here. So we will beat the 4 Headhunters, we will beat Captain Scarlet and her Pirate's Booty, and we will beat Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, as well as, of course, finishing the game proper. So there we go. Okay. I was kind of surprised. I hadn't actually looked at reviews of really any of Borderlands 2 at all. Once I realized I liked it, I didn't care what the reviews said. I think maybe I did when it came to like Sir Hammerlock's Game Hunt, because I was like, this doesn't really feel all that great. Torg's campaign, I like Torg as a character. It's voiced by the guy who voices Hercule or Mr. Satan in the Dragon Ball series. Very unique voice actor, and I think the character's pretty well written as kind of like a just over-the-top meathead, roided out, just heavy metal. Anyway, you're not going to really see much of him. He does make an appearance in the Turkey or the Thanksgiving Headhunter DLC or little mini mission. So you will get a little taste of him there. If you're not familiar with the character, but he really shines. He does make a cameo in Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. So you'll get a little bit of Torg, but to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Some people don't like him. Some people hate his guts. I like him well enough. I just don't, the campaign I don't like. It does feel very much like original Borderlands, where it's again very bleak, a lot of grays, a lot of brown colors, again very bizarre characters, and not very compelling. But I was kind of surprised to find that a lot of folks did. I think Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, I'll just call it Tiny Tina's Assault. I think that's almost universally loved by people who love the game, just because it does have some feels in it. But it's really, I mean, it's a D&D meets Borderlands. Like, there's really not, and one of the things I love about it, and you'll see it there, you can actually, it'll give you a few puzzles to solve, but there's just that awareness. This is not a puzzle solving game. This is not a game for people who want to spend like 20, 30 minutes figuring out the mechanics of a puzzle and try to solve it. So they have you try, and if you fail, you can actually just skip it. Like, I think you can just punch, like one of the things is like a cube you have to try to, it's like almost like a Rubik's Cube type thing. And you can just punch it, break it, and move on. So it's kind of cool in that regard. But anyway, I think it's a almost universally loved DLC for this game. But Captain Scarlet was not, and I liked her character well enough. People thought it was kind of meh, or some people seemed to think so. I never once thought it was lacking anyway. I thought it was interesting enough for a Borderlands thing. I mean, you got to remember well, you don't have to remember if you don't know. Borderlands didn't really have a plot. It was really just loot. Grab loot. Just it's a loot harvesting game. Like, just get all the cool weapons and play around and have fun with them in this giant, bleak world. And I mean, there is an ending, but it's kind of like the biggest letdown. I don't know if any game. I mean, it's better than an Atari game that doesn't really have an ending, or it just has like a very basic ending or just credits, but it's not much of an ending. It's not much of a plot. You're there to open the vault. And that's really it. Until you get to the DLCs, but even they don't really expand on that too much. So I wasn't really expecting a whole lot from either Borderlands 2 proper or the DLCs. So any kind of plot, any kind of main character that's kind of fun. I mean, Scarlet she's a fun character. I mean, she's not terribly malevolent. And people are like, there's no twist. You kind of see it coming. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's Borderlands, folks. Like, I don't know. I don't mind if a game becomes more than what you would expect, where it beats your expectations, where it kind of surprises you. There's nothing wrong with that. But similar to how it allows you to skip over puzzles, it's like Borderlands knows what it's about and what its strengths are, and it's not trying to be something else. So I don't expect it to have a plot twist, really. It does have some surprise moments, and I'm not going to talk about them until they happen. Well, actually, I'd say one kind of surprise reveal and one shocking moment, and we'll talk about those, like I said, as they come up. But on the whole, it's very... You're going to go through, you're going to kill something or someone... Or some things are going to try to kill you, and you're going to try to kill it, and that's the game. It's very simple, you know, very straightforward. One of the reasons I like it, it's just you don't have to think too hard about it. Yeah. But yeah, so this one is a drastic improvement. Like I said, you have a main villain in Handsome Jack, and he's very well written and very well fleshed out. Has some good humor, dark humor again, but pretty good humor. I think the bosses are a little more colorful, a little more engaging. And yeah, I do remember it. I felt like the guns and the controls were a little slightly mushy, for lack of a better word, than the first one. The first one felt very crisp. And I do think there was a fundamental shift where they went from, okay, these are pretty much normal SMGs, assault rifles, whatever, you know, whatever weapon type we're talking about. Pretty much normal, but we're gonna put like a little green tube on the back, or a little something to it to give it an elemental buff. But they didn't have a lot of really zany fire patterns or quirks or anything like that. It was like a basic gun with some upgrades and some variants in its properties. Where I feel like Borderlands 2 really leaned into, all right, some of these guns are gonna be wacky. There's one of them called, we don't do this mission, so I don't mind talking about it. It's a side quest. It's called the Bane. It's an SMG, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, every time you shoot it, you hear this it's like a little goblin laughter or something like that, and it drives you crazy. So if you have the sound on at all, the gun just, oh my gosh, it's not super powerful. It is more, if you get it at the right level, it's stronger than pretty much a lot of the other SMGs you can get, but it just is annoying as heck. I hate those are frustrating deaths where there's stuff around for you to kill where you could get your second win, but they're far enough away, and sometimes the little bastards will run away from you. Like, as soon as they get you down, they'll be like, okay, it's time for me to peace out, and they'll run away and they'll hide behind cover. Before, they were just standing there brazenly shooting at you, but as soon as you go down and you need to get your second wind, they just run off and you die. But, I mean, the deaths in this game, they don't hurt your XP. They just cost you money, and the less money you have, the less they cost you. So it's like a tax, I guess, a death tax. So it's not the worst thing in the world. In this game, I think less so than the first one. I think there were a lot more times where I found really valuable stuff in vending machines, and so you always wanted to have 200,000 to 300,000 credits or dollars, whatever the currency actually is in this. You wanted to have those handy because the last thing you wanted was to come on a vending machine that had a character mod or a class mod or a shield or something that you wanted, and you can't afford it. So I had a whole thing with that too. Like I would store weapons or things that had a high resale value, so that, because that's not impacted by your death. You don't lose weapons or anything like that. So instead of losing all my money on a death tax, I just wouldn't trade the guns in, and then if I found something I wanted and I didn't have the funds, I would just sell that stash and get the money that way. So again, big brain thinking, big brain, big planning. But this game, I think, is less than that. I don't think there are as many good drops in the vending machines. It's more like you need to farm the stuff than get it in the machine. So a little less focus. I was a little less concerned in this playthrough about keeping my finances up. because really this is an investment simulator. What Borderlands is. And you know, the gunplay and everything is just secondary. It's really all about investing your money and investing in certain weapons that you know are going to increase in value, trying to ride the market, make the trades at the right time, upgrade your stuff at the right time. That's really all it is. It's really just it's a financial game. It's a business game. Anyway. False advertising, misinformation. But it is a lot of fun. And the tragedy is I have my best friend, well, predictably tragic. My best friend of 30 years now. Is it 30? Just about 30. 29 years. Is a gentleman named Eric. And he likes the game. He's actually, I would consider him more of a gamer than I am. He picks up stuff a lot faster. If we rent a game, he's more likely to be effective with it and to go get further with it and to know what he's doing than I am. He remembers, you know, he has a better sense of direction than I do, so he can navigate easier, remembers where he's been. I kind of, I forget about it. As soon as I leave an area, I totally forget where stuff is if I'm not purposely paying attention. Anyway, even though we're friends for almost 30 years, we are almost polar opposites in everything. Our taste in movies and music, just pretty much everything you could have a differing opinion on that isn't really tied to core values. For the most part, those we do align with, but everything else is just kind of just fun or personality-wise. We're just very, very different. And so there was a time where I was trying to get him to play Borderlands 2 with me, and he was trying to get me to play Call of Duty. And I didn't like Call of Duty because it didn't have the RPG element. You couldn't really level up. I mean, you could get better weapons or get modifications for. Actually, I don't even know if you could at that point, because I have played Call of Duty. I did Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I think it is what I really got into, and I played it with him. I finally caved. He tried Borderlands 1, I think, for like an hour. I'll give him that. He tried it for an hour. I was like, this isn't my thing. I'm like, what? Now, I'm not saying that he should have tried it for longer. I mean, I genuinely think it just didn't gel with him. But just as this game, and it's kind of cartoonish, over-the-top RPG-type things didn't work for him, Call of Duty, at least the version we played, didn't work for me. I couldn't tell where I was getting shot from. You know, you didn't really have shield. It wasn't like you could take a ton of damage. So if you got shot twice, you were pretty much dead. Call of Duty is not a simulator by any stretch, especially Modern Warfare 2 with its bunny hops and sliding into bunny hops and whatever, and quick scoping. It's certainly not. It's not realistic. But compared to Borderlands, it's more of a simulator than it is, you know, a regular one. But it doesn't. I don't know the plot. I don't know. I'm not a big. I don't mind about reading about real world stuff. But like if I'm playing a game, I don't necessarily want to feel like I don't want to go to Afghanistan. Like I don't that. You know, if I'm playing a video game, I want it to be a kind of a fantastic environment. Even if it's similar to this, to the one we have, it needs to have some kind of whimsy to it. And so Call of Duty just didn't fit the bill. And so I played that. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, because I'm the only one telling the story, that I gave that a lot longer than an hour try, and before deciding it just wasn't my cup of tea. So even though we had, we did have some free time for a while. It was before we got married. We had some free time. And we could do co-op. We just didn't like the games that the other one was really into. So I did play this game, I think, with my friend Brian back in Colorado. Shout out to Brian. Hope you're doing well, my friend. And I did do much, much later, after I'd probably done, I don't know, about 20 playthroughs. I had a cadre of friends in Colorado, my Colorado cadre, as it were. And I think we actually had a full team. There were 4 of us, which is the max amount of characters you could play. And we actually, one of the guys I knew, and 2 of them I didn't, or I was acquainted with one, friends with one, and then one guy, he was in a completely different state than all of us. And we all played together and had a good time with it. It was a little bit harder because, as I said, that was probably my 10th, well, I probably said 20th. Didn't I say 20th playthrough? It was up there. It was over 10 at that point. And so it was getting a little tiresome for me. I really hadn't had a lot of downtime with the game, so it was kind of feeling I was kind of over it, which sucks because they were playing it for the first time, so they were all about it. And so I just didn't have quite the enthusiasm that they did. But it was a good time. So I've gotten to do co-op, but I wasn't able to do it with my best bud. And like I said, later on, I matured and was willing to try Call of Duty again because it had zombies and it did have I guess you do level up, don't you? But it's more about, okay, you're unlocking different camo, which is all cosmetic, but it was still kind of cool. You could get gold or platinum or onyx. Was it called onyx? Obelisk? No, that's not right. What am I thinking of? I don't know. Anyway, like a deep black color. Anyway, the bottom line was there was something for you to work towards. So it did kind of draw me into that through those cosmetics. And then there were actual upgrades you could get. You could upgrade your grips and different things. But you were leveling up your gun, not your character. But I think you do level up your character as well, at least for the season playthroughs. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There were enough elements in there to keep me coming back. And it did have a very crisp, that's the word I use for it, crisp interface or, play style. Like the movements, the way you aimed and all that, it felt very tight and it just felt good to play. Like the first Borderlands. Borderlands 2 has a little bit more, like I said, mushiness in terms of the controls, but they're not bad. It's just I don't feel like they're as rigid. Like I said, the guns are a little more quirky in how they function. And so when you do start straying away from your typical firearms and get more creative with it, as this game does, they're going to be handling them and maximizing their efficacy is going to be more of a challenge, and it is going to feel different. So here I am trying to, I'm just like, I hadn't played Gunzerker in a while. I was trying to figure out what build I wanted to go for. Each tree has its perks. I mean, well, literally they're all called perks, but each tree has its strengths. I'm a big fan. Like I try to stay away from characters that have passive abilities. So like Gunzerker, you activate it and allows you to dual wield, but you still have to do the shooting. You still have to do all the stuff. Maya, I think probably my favorite character in the game, she creates a bubble, like a force field type thing that can capture creatures and interact with them that way. But like you still have to shoot them. You still have to do damage. You can get upgrades where it starts doing elemental damage on its own, but it's an assist. It assists you directly with how you interact with the game and with enemies in the game. Whereas like somebody like Axton, he just throws out a turret. You can just leave the turret there and run off, and the turret's going to do what a turret does. And you can max out where it goes nuclear and it has rocket launchers. It's cool. It's very useful, especially if you deploy it before you get, before you start bleeding out. It'll actually give you a second wind, or its kills count toward your second wind. So it's really cool, but it is its own thing. All you're doing is deploying it, and then the game takes it from there. Whereas Gunzerking and Maya's and Craig and one of the Necromancer, one of her skill trees is a robot companion, which again is passive. It does its own thing, but you can also invest in Anarchy stacks, which is more hands-on. So she allows you to play both ways based on the skill tree. But with the other characters, their skill set pretty much, it's either interactive or it's passive. And so I didn't choose Maya for this just because to me she's a lot easier to use. Her ability to focus in on like the biggest bad in the area, or there's some annoying little things that are hard to focus down if you don't have that ability. So I didn't want it to be too easy. And I just found my playthroughs, but while I enjoyed them, they were a lot easier. I'm not much, when it comes to these kind of games, I'm not much of a melee guy. So I thought a Gunzerker who's supposed to be a little bit more in your face about it, a little more deep in the action would be a fitting challenge for me. And then I end up using a sniper rifle for the most part. And the Bee, the good old Bee. See, there we go. Dual wielding, sniper rifle, and the pistol. Definitely not optimal. And I could swap it out. I don't know if you can. I mean, I know you can pause it. I don't know if you can swap it in the middle of Gunzerking. I'm pretty sure you can. Well, and that's right now I've only got 2 gun slots active. I haven't unlocked the other 2. So you can swap out the pairs that he pulls out, which is really cool. So if you build it right, you can be like, all right, this is, depending on the enemy that I'm facing or the group of enemies I'm facing, I can equip these 2 weapons which have a synergy, or I can equip these 2, they're going to be better. The big thing I found that the challenge with him is just running out of ammo. I mean, there is a perk you can get that, or various perks that will refill your ammo for you, but until you can unlock those, you're just going through bullets like nobody's business, and you're having to start using weapons that you don't necessarily want to use in certain circumstances because you can't. I don't know what I'm doing there. It's always funny. I was probably looking at OBS or something to make sure that it was recording. It's just peculiar in those moments where it's like, oh, I ran into a wall. Why am I just running into a wall? I don't know. But yeah. So I guess that gets you up to speed with what this playthrough is going to be about. My very low level of skill with it, despite having so many playthroughs, history with the game. Yeah.
See you real soon, I'm sure.
I guess that's it. I've got nothing to say for the other 25 hours of this video or of this series. I've got nothing else to talk about. No, but that was stuff that I wanted to kind of talk about at the outset. And then we can more or less kind of just focus on what's going on with the game until something strikes my fancy and I shift gears on it. Oh, this is embarrassing. Like, I literally don't, I don't know what to say. But to be fair, when you're playing at a time like this, I mean, what would I be saying? And that's one thing, because I before I started doing this, I was watching other people do playthroughs, first-person playthroughs, and seeing like what they talk about. It's usually a lot of grunting and a lot of oh, I want I'm trying to do this or whatever. But it's very minimal revelatory information. But I guess I just talk about it. Fire weapon I've always found, especially at this part of the game, is always a good thing. Bullymongs are hairy. They catch fire easily, as do a lot of your bandits. So I would try to get my hands on a fire weapon if I can. And then, I mean, I've always just liked the sniping mechanic on here. I did try, I mean, in theory you can quickscope in here. I think I do it a couple times, but not like with Call of Duty. It's not quite as cut and dry as that, but you can, I think if you set it up right, you could get good at quickscoping, because it does allow you to zoom. As you can see, you zoom in very quickly, and you can't adjust that. You can't adjust that. That's something, unlike Call of Duty, where you can invest in, I think it's the scope, and I mean sometimes the barrel. I mean, there's a variety of factors, but they can decrease your line of sight, or your what do they call that? There's a word for it where it's, yeah, it's your how quickly you aim down sight. And sorry, I am just want to make sure that this is recording audio still. I'm using Adobe Audition. I guess that's something else. Well, it has nothing to do with Borderlands, but for the first time, for whatever reason, I've had a Zoom H6? Yeah. Zoom H6 field recorder. I bought that back in like 2013, I think it was. And it's been my steadfast companion through many adventures. And it's had some cosmetic wear and tear, but it's never had a functional problem. But for whatever reason, after shooting my last Tesla video, it kind of tried to eat my memory card. There was just something inside that would not let me pull it out. And I finally was able to get it out. Thankfully, it didn't damage the card, so I was able to pull the data off of it. But then when I thought I maybe fixed it, I tried to put something in there to open up the memory card slot. But when I tried to put the card in there, it got stuck, and it is at this moment it is stuck in there. So I can't really use that functionality, which forced me to look into another way that I could use it, which is nice. I can actually, I didn't realize this, don't know why, but it does actually serve as a microphone interface with the computer. So I can run the microphone into it and then run it through USB into the computer, and that's what I'm doing now. But all that to say, I'm recording into Audition for the second time, and I'm just not used to it's the way it runs. So I'm like, I think it's recording, but I couldn't really see the waveform happening, and so now I can, and that's a true story. All right, I promise I am going to brainstorm things to talk about. So we do not have this downtime where I'm just kind of like, what do I say? I'm shooting things. Look, I shot a bandit in the head. I'm doing a very poor job of shooting other bandits in the head. I guess while you're playing, you can just kind of think out loud. So you're just any whatever is on your mind as you're playing, you can just say it, and that provides the content. Whereas here, because I'm not playing, I don't have a line of thought, a train of thought. I don't have nothing particularly going through my brain. I'm a spectator. And as I said, really, my opinion hasn't changed. I remember generally the playthrough. It's pretty sloppy in a lot of places. It's not pretty. There's some nice sniper shots, and I will say this too. I guess this is a thing. It's a much different experience playing on a PC or using a keyboard on a PC, keyboard and mouse, than it is a controller. People who snipe on using with the mouse and everything, it's a point and click, for crying out loud. It's a completely different skill set. There is no skill set involved. I stand by that. Sniping with a mouse and keyboard is exponentially easier than trying to do it with, the thumbsticks. It's a lot harder to line up your shot and get that cursor where you want it to be and keep it where you want it to be. Whereas with the mouse, you just zoom it over, you just boop, there it is. It's one hand controlling where your cursor goes. Whereas here you gotta combine the things. You gotta track it. You gotta hold it. You gotta do things. It's hard. It's hard using your thumbs. And I like the challenge. It makes it satisfying. But I just don't know how people derive any satisfaction from playing first-person shooter games with a mouse. I mean, I get your access to the keyboard. Obviously, the keyboard is like the biggest controller ever. So you have a lot more functionality with it. You can if you're used to it, you can do all kinds of cool stuff and do things that you really can't do or that are difficult to do with a controller. But it just makes the game easy. It's like easy mode. I don't know. I know that is probably, if anybody, I'm banking on the fact that I've lost most of my audience at this point. So if you are still listening to this or you are still watching, I appreciate it, and trust me, I'm still working for you here. We're gonna make this playthrough a good, fun experience. But I'm anticipating that there won't be enough people watching to really get ticked off or call me out on my, because I've actually talked to people who've been playing like FPS. Okay, so I can commentate on this. When there's nothing happening here, this is me taking a bathroom break or refilling my water or something. So I'm not going to tell you any more about that. I can't tell you exactly what state my bowels were in or whether this was a fetch my drink moment or if it was a need to use the bathroom. But we will resume playing momentarily. I don't stay away for long. I'm not consulting a walkthrough or anything like that. That's another thing that's great about it. It vexes and perplexes me when people get upset that there are like markers in the game. Now, well, okay. In this game, I can understand it because you can't. No, never mind. In this game and in Skyrim and a lot of these open world games, you can turn them off or you just don't have to use them. Like if you don't have the quest activated, you can still finish the quest, but it just won't give you a marker on where you need to go next. So it's like, why, for people like me that don't want to wander around for years on end, I prefer to have a marker so at least I know what direction to head. Because when you got an open world, face it, unless the writing is on point, a lot of times you really don't know what the heck you're supposed to do next. And I think maybe they think that's okay because it's open world, you can explore. But I think the first game that I actually enjoyed exploring was Tears of the Kingdom. I still have not played Breath of the Wild. I played it for like an hour when I first got it, but I haven't really played that yet. But I think it's the same thing. But Tears of the Kingdom, I just enjoyed going around and making rafts and making weird things and trying to, kite different enemies and get some experience points or get the. There we go. Back from the stuff. Back in the saddle, as it were. Just in time to face Boom Boom. I do like the music for these kind of these boss fights. it's a really cool. It's kind of repetitive, but it's got a nice kick to it. I don't have the volume on right now just because I don't want to have the earbuds in, and I don't need the volume because I'm not playing. I never noticed that it's got a windsock up there. Of all the things, like really in this primitive environment, of all the things that they have and don't have, they have windsocks. I guess it does make sense. Is it attached to the gun? No, it's not even attached to the gun. I thought maybe it would be attached to the gun, so like if you're trying to, as you can see, it's a very big gun. It's shooting large projectiles. In theory, I guess you want to know the wind direction when adjusting. I'm giving it way too much thought. This is way too much thought for Borderlands. And that's not an insult. It doesn't want you to have to think that much. I should be using. I don't have an acid weapon, or is it it's acid, or is it it's corrosion? I think that's what it's called. I don't have the corrosion weapon. Otherwise, I'd use it anytime they have your opponent has a. What was I shooting at? I have no clue. Has a yellow health bar. It means they're susceptible to corrosion. But I didn't have a corrosive weapon. Sometimes you get lucky. That's one of the signs we're having that one legendary weapon I was talking about, the Hornet, would be quite a benefit because obviously it's got the corrosion element to it. But if you don't get that, I don't know. I don't remember really picking up a vanilla corrosive weapon this early in the game, like just a common or a rare. I don't remember that. I know fire, but I don't remember picking up a corrosive weapon ever. Anyway, yeah, so not optimal, but we still got through. I've had times where I struggled with Boom Boom or Boom and Boom. I guess is more accurate, but not this time.
Come on, minion! On the ammo!
And it's a mixture. This is certainly not by any stretch a speed run, but the choices that I make are to get through it as fast as possible. So, I was like, okay, is it faster for me just to get up on the gate and mow things down as they come through, or is it better for me to be at the gun? And that is something to also note with this game, and I think it's fair, but you will get less experience if you're in a vehicle, or if you're in something like this where you have unlimited ammo and you're just shooting stuff from the cannon. You get less XP for it. So if you're driving and you want the XP, you got to hop out of your vehicle and plug them in the head with your firearm. Otherwise, you're getting I think it's like a third of the XP. It's at least half. It may be a third of what you normally get if you actually will fight them on your own merits. I do enjoy that. That's one of the things I like with the sniper rifle. It's a very satisfying splat. Red mist, as they say. Not always, obviously. Missing feels really bad. Did I say that out loud? I did. I said something that was so very obvious that I can't believe I wasted oxygen on it. Missing feels bad. Even in this game, folks. I know some games it feels great, but in this game, missing feels bad. Alright, so wait. So I've offended PC players. I've offended zombie fans. I've offended post-apocalyptic fans. I've proven myself to be rather naive in terms of how our modern-day technology works. And we still have 20 minutes left. So, we've covered a lot of ground. But I think what I might end up doing is kind of... It can't really be a podcast because I do like having the game sound effects and volume involved. Just make it more immersive and, so that if I'm not saying something, at least you're able to get the full viewing experience. But I think I might try to do it like a podcast, like think of topics to talk about and just, comment on the game if it becomes relevant, or if there's something really cool happens, or something comes to mind. But we'll see. I'll figure it out. This is a new format. I started doing this with Mario RPG, but I stopped because of scheduling, and I just ran out of time right before I think I hit this situation where I'm like, I don't necessarily have anything prepared to talk about, and I didn't realize that it never occurred to me that if you're not if you're not commenting on your stream of consciousness as you're playing the game, it can be hard to think of something to actually say. Other than noting how abysmally low my sound levels appear to be, yeah, we're just moving through. So apologies. Like I said, appreciate anybody who's sticking with me. Hopefully, if you're not familiar with the game, you're enjoying some of the gameplay. It's not the worst. I'm not stinking it up per se. I just like in this game. I mean, it's also true with Call of Duty. Like you don't have any of the more nuanced factors to work in when you talk about sniping. Like where you put your dot, aside from the accuracy rating of the weapon, which will give you kind of a slight variation in where the bullet goes, pretty much where you point your dot is where the bullet goes. So the level of skill that's involved in getting those headshots is not all that high. So it feels even worse when I miss. Like I said, it'd be a lot easier if I could just mouse over it. You know, just put the cursor on it and click a little button. But I don't know. I will grant you that 2 thumbsticks is a far cry from what it actually feels like to handle a firearm. But it just feels like it's so much closer somehow. And using because you actually have a trigger button. You know, you actually have these buttons that are like they mechanically are like triggers, whereas like pointing and clicking on a mouse, you're just on your desktop. You know, how do you not feel like you're? How do you feel like you're actually engaging with the material when you're just pointing and clicking? I just don't understand. But that's okay though. That's okay. To each their own. I'm not faulting anyone for playing that way. It just doesn't work for me. But I grew up with classic gaming. I grew up. The first controller in my very first controller in my hand was an Atari. You know, one button and a big old joystick. That's all you had. But the first controller that I remember, that I logged a lot of hours with was the old school original Nintendo, the Famicom, as they called it in Japan. And so I've grown up with a controller. I think our family. I think we got my grandparents on my dad's side. Unfortunately, they passed away. When they did, we were able to. We got there. They had an old Mac. It was old when we got it. It was like the old, like the narrow box where it's like the little screen. I mean, it wasn't an iMac, but it was kind of the first thing where it's like the computer and the screen were all one big unit. Well, one small unit, wasn't all that large. That was the first computer we ever had in the house, and it was pretty cool, I guess. But I didn't grow up with PCs. I didn't grow up with computers. My first time I owned a computer, I bought a what was it called? They don't make them anymore. Oh, Compaq. It was a Compaq Presario. I think it was 11-inch laptop. Bought it my sophomore year on credit. It was one of my first credit card purchases. Good times. Back in those days, you actually had to buy. A lot of the laptops in particular did not have internet capability, so you actually had to buy a card that you slid in and it got you the internet. True story. That was the first time I actually had a computer that I was using regularly. Did I really have to go to another bathroom break? I must have been drinking a lot of stuff. I think I did consume some alcohol for this because that would make sense. Yeah, no, I totally did. I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of drinking in the future, but when I do drink, it's usually to enhance my viewing or playing experience. Not enhance it, but make it, I don't know, fun? That sounds horrible to say, but even though I do like playing the game and I enjoy the mechanics, like I have played it so many times that it was like I wanted it to be a little different. I wanted it to be a little more challenging. So like if I play with a little bit of a buzz, you know, that'll be fun. And I think it kind of was, but it does mean that I end up going to the bathroom a lot. I don't think I do it too often, at least in succession like this. But yeah, this is noticeable. There we go. I'm back. Huzzah! But same thing. I've mentioned this in other videos. I do have it's kind of a barometer for how bad a movie is. If I cannot enjoy it with a pretty significant buzz, I don't drink to get drunk. It's happened a couple times by accident. but I try to avoid it at all costs. I like to just get I call it a fuzzy buzz. Just a little bit where you're just kind of like, the brain's a little more relaxed. You're just kind of chilling. It's just like, whatever. Take things a little less seriously. And so there are some movies that I can watch with a bit of a buzz, and they're like, okay. They're still kind of silly or stupid or whatever, but I can still get some enjoyment out of them that I can't get if I'm just watching them sober and being like, entertain me. Come on then, entertain me. But then there are some movies that are just so bad, even with a buzz, I just can't get through them. Like even in that kind of chill, relaxed, laid back state, I'm still going, this sucks. This really, really sucks. And not to throw fuel on the fire, but I mean, I might as well. I don't have anywhere else to go to the conversation at the moment, so might as well piss some more people. I get this is not meant to antagonize anybody. I'm just speaking truth. You know, that's it. Spitting truth. The prequels, Star Wars prequels. Can't get through them even with a buzz, with a heavy buzz. I've tried it twice. The dialogue just kills me every time. And I've had people try to make excuses for it. Oh, it's supposed to be dramatic and like an opera and blah blah blah. And I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying that they're not right. Maybe that's what Lucas is going for. And to be fair, going back and watching the original trilogy, some of the dialogue in certain places is definitely wonky. I think Empire Strikes Back probably is by far the best put together of all the three movies. It has the fewest weaknesses, has some of the better dialogue, the more organic moments, better story elements, and better production values. Jedi just has some very poignant and powerful moments in it. And it's got some of the best effects of the trilogy. Understandably so. I mean, ILM had really come into its own at that point. So visually, I think it was much better. And it did have some really, really good moments in it. But yeah, it does have some wacky writing. And that was one of the first obvious retcons. Like, Lucas was having to account for the fact that, you know, when he wrote A New Hope, Darth Vader did hunt down and betray the Jedi Knights and killed Luke's father. Like, that was the original thing. Darth Vader was not Luke's father at that time. And so he had the dialogue that reflected that, and then he had to fudge it in Return of the Jedi so that Darth Vader could be Luke's father. And the whole from a certain point of view, and you know, when that happens, the man who was your father was destroyed. So what I told you were true from a certain point of view. A certain point of view? Luke, you find many truths we claim to depend greatly on our own point of view. Anyway, so you know, where you could say some sloppy storytelling. I don't fault him. I think having Vader be Luke's father was a good narrative, like, direction to go. Much stronger than just kind of a revenge thing, like, you killed my father. I mean, it was played out to great effect with Princess Bride. You know, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. That is probably, I remember watching that not too long ago, about 5 or 6 months ago, and I was kind of surprised. Like, that is one of the more, like, the Princess Bride in general doesn't take itself too seriously, almost ever, despite whatever's going on screen. But that is one moment when he's getting up after, you know, stabbing and being stabbed and thinking, you think he's done and he's being left for dead. When he stands up, the music, the music, I think, and just the overall, the way it's shot and everything, it really is this is a serious moment. This is actually his moment. My name is Inigo Montoya. I'm not going to say the whole thing again. That would be boring. So it's not that direction would have been lame. It's just, I think it was, the story of Star Wars was served much better by making Darth Vader a family thing. And here's a fun thing to think about that a lot of people, myself included, even, I mean, I'd had all the scripts memorized, or the movies, including soundtrack and everything, memorized. I'd watched it so many times. All three. Well, Empire and Jedi. I New Hope was kind of like my least favorite. And it was the one it took me a little longer to own a VHS copy of it, and I didn't watch it nearly as much. So I'm a little more rusty when it comes to that. But at least with Jedi and Empire, I had them all memorized and just had watched them a million times. Where was I going with this? What was I talking about? Star Wars. Knew the line. Oh, for somebody like me, even for somebody like me who knew the story all that well, this never occurred to me until I was, exploring like, villains and arcs and all that kind of stuff and writing. You don't realize it, but Vader doesn't kill a single rebel on screen, or even that we know of in general, after A New Hope. He chokes out 2 of his officers in Empire Strikes Back, and he cuts off Luke's hand. And he is part of the assault team that goes to, that takes out an Echo base in Hoth, but we don't see him do anything. At least in A New Hope, he's strangling the commander. If this is a console ship, where's the ambassador? And does that whole thing. Commander says ship apart, and of course we see in Rogue One, which I still submit that if Rogue One did not have that brief ending scene where Vader is on the Tatooine 4 and like wrecks everything and looks super cool, I think without that uplifting part, that kind of punctuation at the very end of the movie, I don't think it would be remembered as fondly. Do I have it? That's not is that an unkempt herald? It looks like it. No, it looks like it. That's what an unkempt herald looks like. Doesn't have the paint job of it though. Anyway, I didn't think so. I was like, no, I would have remembered. Dang it, I derailed myself again. I think I end this with, once we defeat Flint, or Flynn, what's his name? Is it Flint? Yeah, Captain Flint. After we beat him, that's pretty much the end of this video. So we're getting close to the end. Oh, what was I saying about?
Please don't burn me again.
Oh, right, killing people. Rogue One. Yeah, I think Rogue One was pretty lackluster compared to everything else Disney has done with Star Wars. It stood out as pretty good. It looked good, but ultimately I really haven't been able to rewatch it successfully. It might be one of those buzz movies. I think it would be fair to say that is a movie that I could probably enjoy with a bit of a buzz, unlike the prequels and certainly anything else Disney Star Wars. But yeah, so obviously that happens in Rogue One. That doesn't happen in A New Hope within the context of the movie. But in Empire, we see Vader on the scene on Hoth, and he doesn't lightsaber anybody, doesn't force choke anybody, doesn't do anything, and he doesn't do anything the whole time. He's just pretty much on his ship, and the only people he kills are his own officers. And then in Jedi, he doesn't kill anybody. Except for the Emperor at the very end. So it's like Lucas, which I mean is kind of smart, because I think like when Empire came out, Lucas knew Darth Vader was going to be Luke's father, and he probably knew he wanted to have a redemption arc for the character. And so I think it was very wise of him to back off of Vader's villainy, because if we had memories of Vader, recently killing somebody, massacring people, just being a really hardcore villain, I think it would be harder to forgive him, or harder to feel sorry for him, or harder to feel like he did turn from the dark side. Like I said, the last time he killed anybody was in the trench in A New Hope, or he killed a rebel with the trench in New Hope. And yeah, he did cut off Luke's hand, but I mean that was showing some restraint as far as a villain is concerned. Granted, it was his son, so that's kind of hardcore. That's some tough love right there. But he didn't kill Luke, didn't kill anybody else, except for other Imperial stuff. And like I said, and Lucas backed that off even in Return of the Jedi, where he hadn't killed anybody. So I think that was an intentional choice to make Vader's turn more sympathetic and more believable, give it more credibility. And just that it wasn't like a last minute thing. Like, we don't show him being, mustache twirling, really bad villain doing horrible things. You don't have that in your memory, because if you don't think about it, but you haven't seen him kill anybody in a really long time. By the time he throws the Emperor down, was looking at his son and makes that move, makes that decision. By that time, you haven't seen him kill a good guy in like 4 hours. So I think that helps make that transition because as people point out, like, you know, if Vader had survived, if he hadn't been killed, he would have had to go to trial for war crimes or whatever. Like he probably would not have lived. He would not have worn a white version of his ensemble. You know, can you just imagine like just Darth Vader, but just palette swapped white? It would. He wouldn't and walked around and been like a really good guy and maybe made his voice like a chipmunk. Like, hello everybody, I just love you. I'm Luke's father. I'm Anakin Skywalker. I love everybody. Although, actually, after the portrayal of Anakin Skywalker in the prequels, that wouldn't be such a stretch. I mean, well, he was hyper emo. He wasn't very chipper, but Anakin was a bit of a twit. So, old Anakin probably would be a bigger, older twit. Anyway, that is. I'm not going to start a new discussion thread at this point. We are coming up on the last couple minutes. So again, thank you very much for sticking with me through this. I guarantee the next video, there will have been brainstorming. I will have something of an agenda to go through. Whether I focus purely on what's going on in the game and just give you some commentary on that, or just think of some other conversations that I can interact with, hopefully that kind of tie in with Borderlands so that it makes some kind of sense. But anyway, thanks so much for hanging with me. Is that the bee? I think that's a bee. Well, no, that's a foreshadowing. Didn't have the right color, but anyway. Thank you so much for watching this first episode of Me and the Bee Play Borderlands 2.